Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Tristan Rallings, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Commander Phil Andrews. Today marks the 105th anniversary of the Battle of Jutland, the largest naval engagement of the First World War and one of the greatest naval engagements in world history. In many ways, Jutland was a culmination of decades of rivalry between Great Britain, the established global power, and Germany, a nation on the rise with dreams of matching them. To achieve their place in the sun, Germany would need to build up their naval forces to a point where they could challenge, or at least deter, Britain's Royal Navy from blockading them or interfering with their overseas colonies and commerce. From 1897, Germany commenced its naval expansion in earnest. Britain's response included the launch in 1906 of a new breed of warship, the Dreadnought, which rendered older ships obsolete. While the naval arms race between the two countries continued through to the outbreak of war in August 1914, the Royal Navy maintained superiority in numbers, even when the Germans made their challenge at Jutland. The battle was fought in the North Sea, about 140 kilometres west of Denmark's Jutland Peninsula, between the Royal Navy's Grand Fleet under Admiral Sir John Jellicoe and the Imperial German Navy High Seas Fleet commanded by Vice Admiral Reinhard Scheer. On the afternoon of the 31st of May 1916 and into the early hours of the 1st of June, fighting raged back and forth in a running battle between some 250 ships. In less than 24 hours, casualties amounted to 10,000, including 8,645 killed. Although no Royal Australian Navy ships were at Jutland, a handful of Australian personnel serving with the Royal Navy participated. Shortly, we will hear the story of Sub-Lieutenant George Malcolm Paterson of HMS Defence, who lost his life during the Battle of Jutland. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families who love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you are able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem. If you are able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of the more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations over more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths of floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Sub-Lieutenant George Malcolm Paterson. George Paterson was born on the 26th of June 1895 in the town of Harwick, Essex, the youngest of 5 children of bank manager John Paterson and wife Priscilla. In 1911, at age 16, George joined the Royal Navy. As a midshipman, he spent his first years of service aboard the training ship HMS Conway, an old 3-masted sailing ship of the line dating from 1839. During 1913, he served in the pre-dreadnought battleship HMS Formidable, part of the Home Fleet's 5th Battle Squadron stationed at Portsmouth. During its early years, the Royal Australian Navy needed experienced officers. Many from the Royal Navy lent their skills and knowledge to its fledgling sister service. Among them was George Paterson, whose transfer to the RAN on the 31st of March 1914, just months before the outbreak of war, was only on paper. He was to remain serving in ships of the Royal Navy's Home Fleet for another 2 years, with a view to joining an RAN ship when the opportunity arose. On appointment to the RAN, George was serving in HMS Defence, a Minotaur-class armoured cruiser serving with the Mediterranean Fleet. After the outbreak of war in August, Defence first saw action in the pursuit of the German ships Goeben and Breslau. Later in 1914, Defence steamed to the South Atlantic before rejoining the 1st Cruiser Squadron in home waters. At the beginning of 1916, George was promoted to acting sub-lieutenant and was set to join the Royal Australian Navy ship, but for reasons unknown, he remained in HMS Defence. It was in this ship that George would participate in one of the greatest naval battles in history. The Battle of Jutland took place on the 31st of May 1916 in the Northern Sea off Jutland, a peninsula of northern Denmark, between the Royal Navy's Grand Fleet and the German High Seas Fleet. A total of 250 ships were involved. 5 members of the Royal Australian Navy are known to have served with the Royal Navy at Jutland, and there were likely others. More Australians would have been there had HMAS Australia not been damaged in an accidental collision a month earlier. Australia was still undergoing repairs and missed the battle. The German plan was to lure portions of Britain's much larger Grand Fleet into the North Sea, where it could be isolated, outnumbered and defeated. The British, after being tipped off by signals intelligence, put their entire force to sea to confront them. Vice Admiral Beattie's battle cruisers raced ahead of the main fleet and soon found themselves tangling with the entire enemy force. After 2 of his ships were blown up and sunk, Beattie steamed north towards the support of the approaching Grand Fleet under Admiral Sir John Jellicoe. Soon after 6 p.m, as the 2 main fleets closed, HMS Defence and HMS Warrior broke away from Jellicoe's line to engage a disabled German cruiser. In executing the breakaway manoeuvre, they almost caused multiple collisions with Beattie's ships, but pressed ahead, then came into range of the main German battle fleet, which engaged. Defence was hit by 2 salvos that caused ammunition storage magazines to detonate. The ship was engulfed in an enormous ball of flame and smoke before disappearing. Many of the Grand Fleet witnessed this shocking event. A midshipman in HMS Malaya wrote, "Defence appeared between us and the enemy on our starboard quarter, and after firing several rounds was suddenly enveloped in smoke and flames. When these lifted, there was only a small space of smooth water where 2 minutes before had been a ship and her crew of 900 men. Just before this, I had been thinking of the 4 midshipmen of my term who were in her, so it is hardly surprising that the sight of her blowing up brought home to me just what we were taking part in. It came with a distinct shock." Defence was sunk with the loss of all on board, about 900 men. Among them was Sub-Lieutenant George Paterson. He was 20 years old. When several other British ships went to the same way that fateful day, it soon became apparent that the catastrophic explosions were caused by lax safety procedures. Extra cordite stowed in the gun turrets and failure to lock safety doors meant that when the turrets were hit, the cordite ignited and flashed down the shafts to detonate the main ammunition magazines between decks. It was a harsh lesson that day, with over 6,000 British sailors dead. Although the British lost more ships and men at Jutland, they could claim a strategic victory. The German High Seas Fleet could not challenge the Royal Navy for control of the sea and remained trapped in port for the rest of the war. Germany remained under blockade. George Paterson's name is listed on the Plymouth Naval Memorial and also on the Roll of Honour on my right, among the almost 62,000 who died while serving with the Australian forces in the First World War. A photograph of his name listed on the Plymouth Naval Memorial is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Sub-Lieutenant George Malcolm Paterson, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
If you're able, please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They have no grave but the cruel sea, no flowers lay at their head. A rusting hulk is their tombstone, a vast on the ocean bed. They shall grow not old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.